If you all be patient for a while, I'm pulling up some text here. I hope. How's that? What's that? You like urine? Well, you guys inspired us, so we moved on. Oh, as usual, my technological skills have failed me. It says that this is blocked from opening in this version. Can you open here? A techno-deva just descends out of empty space. Wonderful.
What did you try to do?
I tried to open that one. Yeah. Can you open that? So as Sarah's pointing out, while we're waiting, or maybe hopefully, what did we have before? Vainly something. And we got rid of vainly and did yearn. Also, we came up with hanker, too, as a more Anglo-Saxon expression, hanker after something. But yearning captures it.
Have you ever been able to open this?
Oh, yes, I had been able to open it. But on these things, they age faster than I do. So programs come and go. And then, could you repeat your question? Repeat your question from last week.
My question was that I'm not looking for purity for enlightenment, but since our true mind and our ordinary mind operate and functions the same at the same time, basically, and when we
Give up.
sit and meditate, would it's considered to be wrong or false to look for and distinguish which is the true mind versus which is the ordinary mind?
So, if I could repeat it, when you're sitting in meditation, you're trying to figure out which activity that arises is true mind, which is not true mind. Is that it? And how do you?
So that I can focus, or not focus, but and in the way that settle the mind there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and I said, hopefully, send that to yourself, and then open it. I said tonight's text will go into that, so send that document to yourself.
Is your email open, Marty?
Just go down to the bottom. Wherever that is that it?
Mail, yeah.
What I'm drawing up is there was two sections I wanted to share with you tonight. The one that I wanted to get isn't going to come up because neither he or I can do it, and I'm sure maybe somebody here can do it, but it's an actual...
So can you get to that file again? I'll try it. I'll send it to myself and then
Okay.
I'll work on it while you're speaking.
Oh, that's okay. Just you send yourself the text?
Yeah.
Next week, we'll see if we can bring that up. There were two sections. One is a section from the Hui Neng's Enlightenment. And I did find that, and I'll bring that up. We'll look at that, because what I want to do is a little case history here. The other one is a really interesting passage from Venerable Xu Yun's autobiography. And Xu Yun translates as empty cloud. He was a great Chinese Buddhist teacher, Chan master of the mid to late 19th century, early 20th century. I think he died in the 50s, 1950 something or other. He was about 119 when he passed away. And he was one of the teachers of my teacher. And in his autobiography, he has a passage describing when he went into the mountains to meditate, which really corresponds to tonight's passage, but I can't get at it. So let's just go into the text anyhow, and then hopefully we'll be able to find it by next week. I'm always putting off. Now I lost the text for tonight. Well, that's okay. Let's see here. Okay. So the text reads, and this will be our last section. If one vainly yearns for enlightenment, did we do this? And then that was the last week, right? We used vainly and yearn? Okay. Well, we kept kind of a little bit of both. Next. You got to go ahead now. Remember we did this? It's just to show you that we changed it. So next. Okay. And now we change, same Chinese, we use hanker. Everybody familiar with hanker? Nobody not know what that means? Hanker.
It's a vintage word.
It's a vintage word, meaning archaic. I guess I'm vintage. Hanker means to long, to yearn after. It's a kind of negative term generally because it indicates kind of an overly acquisitive longing for something. It also has a sort of element of fruitlessness to it. So next, do not hanker, and then we say for marvelous results, and then you see the parentheses, and the parentheses is there because these are some of the phrases or words that we came up with for this one character. What's the character? See it? Next, do not hanker, seek, what? Yeah, then what? What's the word for meow, right? It's the can you, I don't know, now we don't have a pointer anymore. Did anybody bring a pointer?
Point to the meow, please. The meow.
Can you find the meow? Oh, he can't find it. That's actually good that he can't find the meow, because that's what the text is about. He got it. Okay, so this character, and then the second character is guo, and it means, literally, this is meow guo. It means wondrous fruit. Okay, so it has to be translated. The guo, it means the result, the attainment, the consequence of something. When we first came in to take refuge with my teacher and became his disciples, all of the early disciples got guo names. So mine's Guo Ting, Heng Shi's is Guo Jun, someone else is Guo Cai, and it meant fruit or result of, not literally fruit, but result of something. So by giving us the name, he was describing the conditions by which we came to the Dharma, the conditions by which we met up in this lifetime. And for example, the name Guo Cai means literally fruit of the vegetables. So it's like, what is that about? Well, this happens to be a person whose major turning point prior to coming into Buddhism was to see that he was a military person. He had been a soldier in Vietnam and had his heart towards killing reversed, what he witnessed in combat. And then he saw, as he contemplated this in the battlefield, that the action of killing, the action of taking life was conditioned or favored him by taking life of not human beings but animals before that. And so he started to realize that his seeds of compassion, although he didn't use the language then, he didn't have that language, had dried up by taking lives of animals. He grew up on a farm and there was a lot of slaughter. He ate a lot of meat. And immediately in that sequence, he started to see a connection between not having compassion for smaller things leading up to then not being able to feel compassion for his fellow human beings. And so as soon as he had that realization, he became a vegetarian. And just after that, ate vegetables. And so his name means the fruit of being a vegetarian. Literally, fruit of vegetables. And so when he came in, the master gave him that name and said, this is where you need to focus. If you want to gain accomplishment and progress in this life, tune in to your compassion. That impulse that you had, go back and recover that and restore that and fulfill that. And gradually, from compassion, your fullness of your nature and wisdom will arise. So that was his name. So this guo means that. But here it means the attainment or realization or states of mind that you want to accomplish through meditating and getting enlightened. So this meow now refers to, and you'll see our words for it, because it has a both positive and negative connotation in the Chinese. Positively, it's meant to describe something that's wondrous, profound, subtle, refined, almost beyond ideas and concepts, something that is immediately, intuitively known as being edifying and spiritual. However, here it can be used in a negative sense of meaning marvels, psychic powers, miraculous abilities, miracles, the far out. Okay? The far out. And so in this context, it means don't hanker after that. Don't hanker when you sit down to meditate, to have far out, esoteric, wondrous, miraculous, mind-body trips. I don't know how else to describe it. And some of you might name some. Name some states that are associated with meditation that you might have at one time hankered at, but now you don't anymore. Or you've heard that other people hanker after. How's that? Levitation. Mind reading. Or knowing others' thoughts, which is not something you really want to do because it's a mess. I mean, don't go there. What else? So levitating, mind reading. Huh? Feel like cotton. Or a feel stage called zizai, complete total relaxation, that you're just so blissed out. Physically, emotionally, mentally, you have not a trouble in the world. You feel like silk. What else? By the way, these go with the sense organs. So with these would go sights. Hankering to see lights. Hankering to see flowers appearing in space.
Past lives.
Huh?
Seeing past lives.
Seeing past lives. Seeing auras. Anything else you can think of? I mean, we're in Berkeley. Come on, we should be able to list this thing out like crazy. What else? All the sages, right? To see the heavens and the hells, to have the heavenly eye, and so you can see into all the different realms beyond the human, the heavenly ear so you can hear all of that, on and on and on. Smells. You want to smell the special chandala sinking in water, black incense that's referred to in the Shurangama, that only the devas are supposedly able to smell. You want to smell that. Okay? Huh?
I just wonder, is this what people came in with back with the Venerable Master? They had these desires, they sound a lot of them sound very Eastern.
Eastern. You have to remember the East came to the West in the 60s, girl. It was here. So people were reading this text. They were reading Taoist text, and they were reading Buddhist text, and they were reading Tibetan text. And in these descriptions are described all these wondrous states of flowers and incense and sweet dew and so forth. And even if they didn't come in with the specifics, they came in with the orientation. So as soon as they encountered in a text, it was like shopping. I want that one, and I want that one, I want that one. This is on my wish list. If you had a spiritual basket you could put it into, if people put it over into their shopping cart. And so when they meditated, this was what was in the shopping cart. This is a really good analogy. This is what they read or they heard about. So it wasn't necessarily just Eastern at that time. It was very much Western. And they had ideas that enlightenment was something that happened in a flash, like Paul on the road to Damascus, where there's a bolt of lightning and suddenly, and books were out that if you tried hard enough, within a week time of meditation retreat, you could get Satori. You could have the awakening experience. And so people really struggled to get this, although it wasn't clear what it was exactly, but it was something that was dramatic and meow, wondrous beyond words. And that's to some extent why, at that time, seeking the meow also got conflated with the use of drugs, especially mind-altering drugs, because in the use of the mind-altering drugs, you would have these kinds of consciousness-shifting states where you'd see and hear and feel and experience things that were extraordinary. And so at this time, when my teacher came in, if you people read the earliest commentaries, you'll see a lot of, he'll read a text and he'll say, now, there are some people here who are, on LSD looking for the Buddha. Well, you won't find the Buddha on LSD, and you're saying, well, why is he talking? Because people were sitting there stoned on LSD. Okay. This was the 60s. And it was very common for people to go to Buddhism and to go important. Because here, the emphasis then would be, well, why is it this way and not the Tathagata then? If it's one and the same mind, how does that mind get to be the Tathagata's mind? Because it's one mind, not two. It's the same substance. In the Sixth Patriarch Sutra, he uses the analogy of, do you remember, Huali, what the analogy was? Remember ice and water? Yeah. So he's saying ice and water are a single substance, but in different forms. Frozen, it's ice. Fluid, it's water, but one substance. The confused mind and the awakened mind are like ice and water. And so the teaching here comes down to when the mind that is confused stops being confused, stops grasping, stops attaching, gains purity through cultivation of precepts and so forth, and creates a foundation, and gradually comes to let go of all that's not true and that is false. That letting go, that discarding, that stopping of seeking, letting the mind be unattached, letting the mind be unattached, that very stopping is, in fact, the Tathagata's mind. So it's one mind, it's just how it's used. That's the only difference. Used in a correct way, it's the Tathagata's mind. Used in an incorrect way, that was Jung last week, Jung and Bujung, then it's the ordinary mind. So then he goes on to say, in confusion, we distort the wondrous spiritual functioning of a Buddha. We twist and distort it, turning it into delusions, anxiety, and scatteredness. Now, the opposite would be true. In clarity, we rectify the wondrous spiritual functioning of the Buddha. We bring it back into tune, turning it into wisdom, insight, kindness, compassion, equanimity. One mind functioning in two different ways. And that's why it says, do not look outside of this mind for the Buddha, because this very mind is the Buddha. Now, is it confused? Then it's the living being's mind in the state of that. But potentially, it's the Buddha mind. The Avatamsaka, how many people know the Avatamsaka Sutra here? Have looked at a couple? Okay, it's really vast. It's one of the longest texts. And a national master called Qingliang Gosher from China during the Tang, I believe, dynasty. I'm trying to remember if Qingliang Gosher is Tang. I think he is. Yeah. Had a assembly that lasted for decades teaching the Avatamsaka. He was very erudite. He's one of the masterful, learned people of China for his time. He knew all the classics, Taoist, Confucian, and Buddhist. It's said that he could read 6 lines at a time, one with each eye. Try that when you go home. And he wrote a preface and a prologue to the Avatamsaka Sutra to help explain it. And the preface is a poem. It's a wonderful poem. It's out in publication. But in one passage of the poem, he describes this, and he says, the true and false interlink and mingle. True and false interlink and mingle. Within the ordinary mind, we find the Buddha mind. That's the first line of the verse. So what is true, proper, right, pure, enlightened, intermingle with what's wrong, false, impure. Interlink and mingle. It's one substance there in this, and within that ordinary mind, we find the Buddha mind. And then this next line is the principles, the truth, and the specific conditions of our lives, okay, are woven together as well. And we rely on our basic understanding or wisdom to get the Buddha's wisdom. So truth and false and interlink mingle between, in the ordinary I find the Buddha mind. These principles and specifics are tied in together. And we find the enlightenment through the details of our daily lives. It's really interesting text. So what he's saying is bu'ar, not two. This is one. So when you think about it, to answer your question about meditation, again, the emphasis is just moving away from what is not true, what is false, what is klesha, what is afflictions. And when that move away comes, the awakening state, the true mind, manifests by itself. You don't have to seek it. This is what's really critical, because then the emphasis on meditation is actually getting rid of the coverings and the faults, not seeking the true mind. And this is what Han Shan is talking about tonight. The seeking of the true mind actually obstructs the awakening of the true mind. Because the seeking of the true mind comes from hankering. Hankering comes from yearning. Yearning comes from, I lack. Right? I lack. I lack, therefore I yearn. I yearn to fill what I feel I'm lacking. And this, from Han Shan's point of view, is the fundamental root of ignorance, that misperception that I lack, that I'm incomplete, that I'm inadequate, that something's missing. And then I have to fill it, I have to find it, which begins the yearning and the craving, both spiritually and materially. So most of our, what we call desires, are really not cravings so much as they are anxieties over lack. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not like we really desire or want or crave, but we're trying to actually address an anxiety that comes from feeling something's missing. And so whether the text I did once before called the Ching Ding Ding, the classic of purity and stillness, talks about how people, once they get spooked, like horses get spooked with the sense of lack, they start to gallop wildly, going out to accumulate and to acquire. And it becomes a futile search that ends, he says, like as if you're falling in the mud head first. Because you can't fulfill that by this search because you already hold it complete. So the lack always turns out to be a futile search. Same thing happens here, what Han Shan's saying, if you do this spiritually and say, I want the true mind, I'm longing for the true mind, I want the meow guo, I want the wondrous fruits of awakening, you actually end up impeding the natural manifestation of that when all seeking stops, because it comes up by itself at the end of seeking. This is really so important, and yet, even though that's important, almost invariably, even people have been meditating for a very long time, still either are yearning or hankering or afraid that they won't get. And so the frustration and the yearning, the hankering actually messes up your meditation. And so you're sitting there and spinning your tires. You're just burning rubber. Yes. What about the doubt of the Watto? What does that mean? Huh? So what he's asking is the doubt of the Watto and the wanting to know.
Chorus in black and white, because know, even in other Buddhist texts like the 100-door Shastra or the Yogacara text, it talks about different mental factors that we all have, and some of those mental factors are pretty positive, some are pretty negative, and they make distinctions. You know, they have these what they call positive desires toward good, and then the Sanskrit word is chandra, which is different from
Krishna.
the usual word of desires is Trishna. It's actually different in Sanskrit word, even though in English translation it would still be translated as quote unquote desire. But it's talking about that kind of initial movement toward uncovering or returning toward your original nature. But it's still a movement towards something. So I think it's more subtle. You know, if we use the word English, yearning or desire, that doesn't necessarily get to the subtlety of differences, different mental states that are various and different.
So here you could say the text is very clear. It's just talking about yearning for meow, which isn't the Wato. The Wato actually, ironically, is a poison meant to fight poison. So it's meant to be a yearning that frustrates yearning. This is kind of, I mean, it sounds ironic. And what it's meant to do is, and remember this wonderful talk that Xu Yun, the same master, gave in Shanghai. He was saying, basically, everything is thus, and there's nothing you yearn for and nothing to strive for. There's not even anything to know, as it says in the Heart Sutra. However, people get confused, and they can't. And so we have to come up, he said, with expedients to get the mad mind to stop. So we take the mad mind's yearning for the 10,000 things and bring it down to one, the Huato, or to one recitation. And that's the first stage of gathering in the scattered consciousness that he's talking about here, by bringing it back to one focus. But that one focus is a trick. And then the next line says, because there's nothing to get, then what? The Bodhisattva, through reliance on wisdom, is unimpeded in the mind. There's no impediment now to the mind. And because there's no impediment, there's no fear and anxiety. And because there's no fear and anxiety, then what? No more upside-down dream thinking. This is wonderful. And because there's no more upside-down dream thinking, ultimately, free at last, nirvana. Okay? This is how the sequence goes. There's no knowing attained because there's nothing to get. The Bodhisattva, through reliance on this wisdom, has no impediments in the mind. And because the mind is completely unimpeded, there's no fear of getting or losing. And because there's no fear, there's no more upside-down dream thinking, which is the seeking, yearning, grasping. Ultimately, nirvana. Easy. Okay? We're over. It's it. You got the magic formula. But you realize it starts with there's nothing to get. Going back, there's nothing lacking. If you understand that, then you let go of all seeking and yearning. And in doing that, you have no impediment. The impediment comes from wanting and yearning. So that's what no impediment means. There's nothing to be, and there's no fear then. Fear of not getting, fear of getting, wanting, yearning, it's all gone. And when that's gone, the next thing is the upside-down dream thinking. Now, what is that? I think we spent a lot of time on that one. What's upside down? Diandao is a Chinese word, means literally upside down, like bats. Bats hang up upside down. Except when they go poop, then they raise themselves and go upside down again. Okay, just so you know the wondering. Okay, if you stand on your head and look at the world, something doesn't look right. You ever tried that? Yeah, you did. Well, as you were kids, you ever hang on the monkey bars upside down? That was my first mind-altering experience. It wasn't a drug, it was the monkey bars. I got on the monkey bars, put my legs and went backwards and like, whoa! Everybody was smiling, was frowning. Everybody was frowning, was laughing. People's hair were going up, and and I was like, I thought that was really interesting. The whole world was like totally, light minds affect light things. So I was affected by it, and I thought, wow, this is really crazy, upside down. Well, what the text is saying is, before you're awakened in the state of yearning, grasping, and confusion, we are in fact upside down. We're seeing things not right side up. And when that stops, that opposite inversion is awakening. We see things right side up. Same world, seen differently. What's changed is our orientation. So that upside down dream thinking, the combination, seeing things upside down and dreaming, the dream state as opposed to right side up awake, is the awakened state. So it's a really kind of vivid metaphor for what goes on in this process. So that's what he's talking about here. We turn the pure Dharma body into the karma of samsara and turn the pure and wondrous Buddha land into the dusty realm of the six senses. So this is the heart of this text. And basically, why it's so important, it's saying we have everything we need, whole and complete, to realize the true mind, or the Buddha mind, or the Tathagata state. And it's only because we're misusing it, it's a little off, that we don't. And so awakening is sort of the process of just straightening out the functioning of the mind, letting the mind function in its natural state of a clear seeing, understanding, wisdom, insight, and so on and so forth. It sounds so simple, but when we practice and whatnot, what we first encounter are the twists and turns and distortions. And that's kind of good in the sense that that's exactly where the effort then has to go. And my twists and distortions are not going to be the same as yours. So he doesn't get very specific here. They just give the list. And you sort of go through and figure out which ones are yours. And it's where there's rub. There's where there's anxiety. There's where there's discomfort. It's where there's irritation. That's where the rub is. And by penetrating and seeing through that, it turns into the opposite. And that's why they can say afflictions are bodhi, and bodhi is just afflictions. I wish I could find that Han Shan text for tonight, but I can't. But I want to maybe show you something else here. Could you put up that passage from the Platform Sutra? So I sort of mentioned a little bit about the 60s. And by the way, this goes across the tradition. In China, at the time that this was happening, and even back in India, there was a lot of altered states of consciousness associated with the spiritual path that people took to be signs or markers, xiang, in Chinese, xiang, marks that you were getting there, you were accomplishing something. And sometimes these were brought on by drugs or different kinds of drinks, sensory deprivation experiences, sometimes brought about through using of mantras, fasting, divination, mediumship. Do you know what I mean by medium? You sort of, I guess in the channeling, Western channeling, right? People go into these trances and then receive a message from somebody in some other realm, and they channel that message or voice. You all know what I'm afraid you do know what I'm talking about here. Madame Blavatsky used to channel these seers, sages from another realm, other astral-bodied beings, and she would sit there and then she'd pick up the pen and the pen would write itself. And she wrote her whole book, Isis Revealed, on the basis of channeling these spirits from another realm. Now, you're laughing, but it's still hot. I once was at GTU, I was teaching this, and somebody said, "Are you making fun of my teacher?" And, whoa. Because they really believed that this was she was an enlightened being. And she was interested in Buddhism, by the way. She and her friend, a Civil War retired general, now I'm diverting, met at a farmhouse in upstate New York. during one of these seances, because they were popular at this time. I mean, people didn't go to movies or plays. People were interested. They'd go up to upstate New York. I don't know why, New York. And they go to these farmhouses or go on and they'd have seances. Not like Ouija board, but they'd actually have seances where they all sit around a table, hold hands, and then call in the spirits of those who had gone beyond and communicate with them. This was very popular. It was called spiritualism. Very popular. It was very popular in Boston, too, during William James's time. So they were doing it there. And then it became popular in Berkeley in the 60s again. It goes through cycles. And who knows, if they come back, or maybe you think it's hot still. But they would do that, and they met there. And then they started a group called Theosophy, the Theosophists. They were the founders of Theosophy. And then they went to bring Buddhism back to India. So they brought their Buddhism back to India, namely Sri Lanka, and they were looking for the avatar Maitreya, the Buddha, to come. And so they chose this young lad who looked like Jesus. He had long black hair and a nice complexion and really handsome. And so they groomed him to be the next Buddha, but he kind of figured out they weren't up to, they weren't really genuine. And so he went off and became a Buddhist monk. Abandoned them. His name is Anagarika Dharmapala. Some of you know him, a very famous Buddhist monk. And then they said, okay, well, we'll find another one. Then they found a look-alike, another young man, and they got him going. And he bailed on them too eventually. His name was Krishnamurti. So yeah, it's like, yeah, well, it's really interesting. And they all started in a farmhouse in upstate New York with a seance. So where I'm sort of going with this is this seance energy, this kind of stuff comes and goes in waves. People still do it. It's in the Chinese religious spiritual realm all the time. Psychics, right? Get your fortune read, get your stars read, get your palm read, do the tarot cards. What is the Chinese? Let's see. Yeah, a face. Read the face, right? That's one. Physiognomy. Face reading. What's some of the other ones? Huh? Astrology, yeah, that's another one. Palm. The I Ching, yeah. I mean, all of this stuff is just same kind of mind that's looking outside for all these solutions and answers. Anyhow, by the way, I mean, now that I'm just digressing, I might as well. So they went in, and then they had went into Sri Lanka, and they decided that the Buddhists needed a Bible, so they got behind the Buddhist Bible movement and created a Buddhist Bible that became very popular. And then they said Buddhism needed a flag. Yeah, so you guys see that multicolored little flag we got around here? That's the Buddhist flag. They made that. So you're going, wait a minute, you mean that yellow, green, purple? You know what I mean? I don't know if we have a Buddhist flag here. Is it somewhere? Yeah, they have it up at the flagpole of the city. So you're saying that's the Buddhist flag. Well, wait a minute. Why would Buddhists have a flag? Kind of thinking, because like, have the mind that a grasp attaches nowhere, nothing. So they invented it. And they invented this flag to sort of create a national, a revitalization of a national movement in Sri Lanka and places like that, in Malaysia, to push out the colonial Christians and bring back a kind of refortified Buddhism. So they had a Bible to fight the missionaries' word book, and they created a flag. I mean, they could have gotten uniforms if they kept going, but...
Marketing brought the Buddhism.
Yeah, and Dharmapala was one of the people that introduced meditation to lay people then, as part of a counter movement to the power of Protestantism. So he wanted to get a more active spiritual engagement going, and that's how Buddhism started to move from the monasteries. Anyhow, long story. Anyhow, so this is all what's being talked about. But if you look at the account of the awakening, I don't know what to call this, the awakening moment, or I won't even call it awakening experience, because experience sounds like some kind of thing again, right? I had this experience. So I don't even like to use experience. I want to use the state or the condition of awakening. And again, we could look at lots, but just look at this one. This is Hui Nung's. And what I want to point out here, what he describes, he does not describe any bells or whistles or sights or visions or states or hearings or wonderful, extraordinary colors, right? Look at he says, his teacher, starting, explained the Diamond Sutra for me. The Diamond Sutra, everybody know that one? In Sanskrit it's called? It's Vajra Sutra, okay? And the Vajra Sutra, interestingly, has this line in there. The Buddha asked Subhuti, he says to Subhuti, can you find the Tathagata in physical appearance? And Subhuti says, no, you can't. And the Buddha says, that's right, you can't. And then the Buddha says, if you look for me, the Buddha, in marks, you will, and if you look for me in sights and sounds, you will never find the Buddha. You walk a crooked path, will never get there. So all with marks, he says, all with appearances is empty and false. And if you can see no mark, I see all marks as no marks, you're seeing the Tathagata. This is the Vajra Sutra. So this is really reinforcing that concept. So he says he did the Vajra Diamond Sutra for me. He was explaining it for me. And when he came to the line in the text that says, let your mind be unattached, clinging to nothing, Ying Wu So Ju, right? That line. As soon as these words were uttered, I experienced a profound awakening. Sweet dew rained down on my head. I was lifted up and levitated on a lotus. I saw magnificent light shooting out in the tent. No. And I understood that the inherent nature embraces the myriad things. And what did I say then? How unexpected. The essential nature is intrinsically pure. How unexpected the essential nature is originally unborn and undying. How unexpected the essential nature is complete in itself, lacking nothing. How unexpected the essential nature is fundamentally still and unmoving. How unexpected from the essential nature the myriad dharmas come to be. Now, nothing far out, nothing meow there. Profound, just directly seeing things as they really are. And he keeps saying how unexpected. And I think we could interpret that many ways, but unexpected means it was so straightforward, so evident and clear, not meow and far out. So I just point to this. If you look at the awakening moments or states throughout the text, you'll see a similar pattern. You won't see the fireworks. You won't see anything like that. You'll see these kinds of statements like, gosh, I've been sitting on it all the time, and it's just like this. Yeah, the aha, thus. Okay, it's just as it is. In other words, I just got from upside down to right side, and I'm like, wow, look at it. That's how it is. It's just thus. So I emphasize this because it illustrates what Han Shan is saying in his text. If I had the Shuyan passage tonight, I would show you how Shuyan himself got caught up in the meow in its early stages, and it's pretty far out some of his states. Next week I'll see if I can find that and bring it, and then you'll see what happened to him and what caused him to turn away from that and then actually have his awakening moment as a result of leaving that behind and how that happened in the mountains. So I don't know if that answers your question completely, but it's framing it in a way of not even seeking the true mind. Okay, any questions or?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are paranormal experiences then to be refuted?
Well, so the question is, are paranormal experiences then to be refuted? And there's two ways to answer it. One, from within seeing things clearly, no upside down dream thinking anymore, there's just normal. What we call paranormal is because we're away from the normal. In other words, it seems paranormal because we're so stuck in something. And so by contrast, it seems paranormal. My teacher used to say, when you see the paranormal as normal, you're seeing things as they really are. And so when he says what he's saying here, he's saying the paranormal is the ordinary. And it only seems paranormal because we're so far removed from it. Once we turn right side up, what seemed to be the paranormal is actually very normal and very ordinary. And it's not to be refuted. It's just simply not to be hankered after or yearned for. So if in the process of meditation, these states do occur, that you can know other people's thoughts, you can see past lives, you can whatever. It's just the opening of a natural function of mind and consciousness. And if you just see it as normal, nothing extraordinary, and don't get attached to it and think I'm special or I'm enlightened or I'm a sage, it just finds its place in your totality of your being, and then everything's okay. The text always say, if you, on the other hand, you think it's paranormal, extraordinary, and then by contrast you are extraordinary and so forth, then you get stuck and you go down, you get what's called a spiritual sickness. And so the idea is, yes, these things can happen and do happen. But I guess the trick or the method is to see them as ordinary, not extraordinary. And then they just balance out. So I could bring other text in. I remember the one I mentioned to you about the famous forest meditating monk who had these states, and he just treated them as normal. He didn't treat them as extraordinary. See, and I mentioned him, he said he was sitting in his cave, and the villagers would come and they'd make food offerings, and he'd say, good, you come, and he'd speak Dharma for them because they requested lessons. And he'd say, don't get so angry, don't be jealous, don't cheat on your wife and your husband, be good. And by that time they were like, oh, that's enough. And they go away. And he said he'd sit in meditation for a little longer, and then at nighttime the devas and maharagas, the dragon spirits and devas and gods would come and make offerings. And he said, and I'd speak Dharma for them, and I'd speak of Prajnaparamita, the 10 perfections and the realms beyond. And they would listen all night long, and then in the morning they would leave. And it was like just these two groups of people came, and I responded appropriately, and then I just continued on. It was like nothing extraordinary. Well, I tell you, if you go home at night and the Maragas and Devas come to you, right, you'd be here next Friday going, whoa, 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 and but he just level and equal. It wasn't anything extraordinary. These realms exist. These are what these realms are like. There's hells and there's animals and there's ghosts and there's devas, and it's all there. And there's nothing extraordinary about it. It's just thus. And that's how they have that. That's what equanimity means. Okay. I hope that didn't create hankering, but any other questions or things? Announcements, perhaps? Okay, I guess we'll transfer and see you all next Friday. Since you know it's always happening, I guess everybody else does too. Yeah. Would you like to announce for those who don't have psychic powers?
For those who don't have paranormal abilities, we have a Gwenin session coming up, I believe March 16th to start 22nd, and Doug Powers will be leading the evening sessions, and some of the monastics as well will be helping with some of the discussion. I think they're going to go over the Heart Sutra, so if people have not been at a Gwenin recitation session, it'd be a really good time to visit. Yeah, we have probably not be having our regular Monday night class on the week of the Gwenin session. So just let people know. You mean for the Eckhart week? Oh, yeah. I'll have to ask about that one. We'll let people know about this next week after that. We might also be away. Okay.